Admiral Vexton stood on the bridge of his warship, looking out at the empty space around the yellow star. His ship, the Sovereign's Will, was one of the most powerful vessels in the Zalani Empire. For 300 years, he had served the Empire. In that time, he had conquered 12 different worlds and brought their people under Zalani rule. The Kepler 442 system was supposed to be empty. Their scouts had reported no intelligent life, no cities, no ships. It was just another star system with a few rocky planets that might be useful for mining. Vexton was here with 5 ships to claim it for the Empire. Admiral called his communications officer, a young Zalani named Tarth. "I'm picking up something strange." Vexton turned toward the officer. "What is it?" "A ship, sir. It just appeared out of hyperspace. But it's not one of ours." The main screen flickered to life. Vexton saw a vessel, unlike anything he had ever seen before. It was long and angular, painted in dark gray metal. Strange markings covered its hull. Most importantly, it was clearly damaged. Scorch marks ran along its sides, and part of its rear section was completely gone. "It's small," observed his weapons officer, Sub-Commander Zekaloth. "Maybe 1/10 the size of our ship." Vexton nodded. The alien vessel was tiny, compared to the massive Zalani warships. It looked like it had been through a terrible battle. Whoever was inside must be desperate. "Any life signs?" Vexton asked. Tar's single quotes ETH checked his instruments. "Yes, sir. Several hundred beings. Their biology is strange. I've never seen anything like it." This was interesting. In all his years of conquest, Vexton had learned that first contact was usually simple. New species would either attack immediately, or they would beg for mercy. Most chose to beg. Very few species were brave enough to fight the mighty Zalani Empire. "Open a channel," Vexton ordered. "Let's see what these creatures want." The communications system crackled to life. Then, a voice spoke in a language the ship's computers quickly translated. The voice was firm and showed no fear. "Unknown vessels, this is Captain Jake Morrison, of the United Earth Navy. We claim salvage rights to this system under Terran maritime law. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The bridge fell silent. Vexton blinked his large eyes in surprise. Zekaloth's mouth fell open. Even young Tarth stopped working and stared at the screen. A threat. This tiny damaged ship was threatening them. Vexton began to laugh. It started as a small chuckle, but soon he was laughing so hard that tears formed in his eyes. Around the bridge, other officers joined in. The idea was so ridiculous that they couldn't help themselves. "Did you hear that?" Vexton said between laughs. "They're threatening us. A ship that's falling apart wants us to leave." Zekaloth wiped his eyes. "Admiral, should we destroy them?" Vexton thought for a moment. The smart thing would be to blow up the alien ship and move on. But he was curious. What kind of species would threaten a superior force? What technology did they have? Maybe their ship had some interesting weapons or defenses that the Empire could use. "No," he said finally. "I want to capture them alive. This Captain Morrison and his crew might be useful. Their ship certainly has some interesting technology." The Admiral opened the communication channel. "Alien vessel, this is Admiral Vexton of the Zalani Empire. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender now, and you will be treated according to Imperial law." There was a pause. Then Captain Morrison's voice came back, still calm and unafraid. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. We are the United Earth Navy. We don't surrender. If you want our ship, you'll have to take it." Vexton's amusement faded. He had given these aliens a chance. Now they would learn what happened to those who defied the Empire. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "Disable their weapons and engines, but don't destroy them. I want prisoners." The 5 Zalani ships moved toward the alien vessel. They were massive compared to the human ship, like giant predators closing in on wounded prey. Vexton expected the aliens to panic now that they saw the true size of the Zilani fleet. Instead, something incredible happened. The human ship turned toward them and accelerated. It was charging straight at the Zilani fleet. Sir Tarth called out in shock. "They're attacking us." The alien ship opened fire. Bright beams of energy shot out from its weapons. The first blast hit the Zilani ship Eternal Victory. To everyone's surprise, the beam went straight through the ship's shields like they weren't even there. "How is that possible?" Zikaloth demanded. More beams struck the Zilani ships. Each hit caused serious damage. The alien weapons were incredibly powerful for such a small vessel. But that wasn't the most surprising thing. The most surprising thing was how the human ship moved. It twisted and spun through space like a living creature. It avoided most of the Zilani weapons fire, and when it couldn't avoid a hit, something strange happened. The ship's hull seemed to change, becoming harder where the weapons struck it. "Their armor is adapting," the science officer reported. "Each time we hit them, their hull becomes stronger against that type of weapon." Vexton watched in fascination as the small human ship danced between his massive warships. It was like watching a small, quick animal fight against much larger predators. The humans were clearly outmatched, but they fought with a skill and desperation that he had never seen before. The battle lasted only 10 minutes, but in that time, the human ship managed to destroy one Zilani vessel and damage 3 others. Finally, overwhelmed by the superior numbers, the alien ship began to lose power. "We have them," Zikaloth reported. "Their engines are failing." Vexton opened the communication channel one more time. "Surrender now, Captain Morrison. You fought well, but it's over." The response chilled him to the bone. "Admiral, this is Lieutenant Amy Foster, Chief Engineer. Captain Morrison is dead. Most of our crew is dead, but you want to know something? We're taking this ship with us, and we're taking some of you too." Before Vexton could respond, every alarm on his ship began screaming. His science officer's voice was high with panic. "Sir, the alien ship's reactor is overloading. It's going to explode." The human ship erupted in a ball of white fire. The explosion was so powerful that it destroyed the damaged Zilani vessel next to it and sent deadly debris flying in all directions. When the light faded, there was nothing left of the human ship but scattered metal and energy. Vexton stared at the empty space where the alien vessel had been. In all his years of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. A species that would rather die than surrender. A crew that would destroy their own ship to take enemies with them. "Sir," Tarth said quietly, "what were those creatures?" Vexton didn't answer immediately. He was thinking about the last words he had heard from the human ship. Lieutenant Foster had seemed almost happy about dying, as long as she could hurt the Zilani fleet. What kind of species produced warriors like that? "I don't know," he said finally, "but I think we need to find out where they came from." 3 humans had survived the explosion of their ship. Admiral Vexton looked at them through the energy barrier of their prison cell. They sat on simple metal benches, wearing the strange uniforms of their species. Even as prisoners, they held themselves straight and proud. The largest of the 3 was Captain Jake Morrison. He had survived the battle with burns on his face and a broken arm, but his eyes still showed no fear. Next to him sat Dr. Lisa Park, a female with short black hair, who had been treating wounded crew members when the ship was captured. The 3rd prisoner was Sergeant Ryan Kelly, a heavily built man with scars on his hands and arms. "They're so small," observed Subcommander Zikaloth. "How did creatures this size fight so well?" Vexton had been wondering the same thing. The humans were much smaller than the Zilani. They had no natural weapons like claws or armored skin, yet they had fought like demons. "Bring in the interrogation specialist," Vexton ordered. Mind reader. Veltar was the best interrogation specialist in the fleet. She could break the will of any prisoner within hours. Her mental powers could reach into minds and pull out secrets. She had never failed to get information from a captive. Veltar entered the prison area and approached the first human, Captain Morrison. She placed her hands near his head and began to probe his mind. Her face showed confidence at first, then confusion, then strained. After several minutes, she stepped back, breathing hard. "What did you learn?" Vexton asked. Veltar shook her head. "It's incredible, Admiral. His mind is like a fortress. Every thought is protected by walls of discipline and training. When I try to push deeper, I find more walls. It's like his entire species has been trained to resist mental attacks." She moved to the female Dr. Park. The result was the same. The human doctor's mind was just as well protected as the soldiers. "How is this possible?" Veltar asked. "Even our own warriors don't have mental defenses this strong." Vexton was beginning to understand that these humans were different from any species the Empire had encountered. He decided to try a different approach. "Open the cell," he ordered. The energy barrier disappeared. Captain Morrison stood up slowly, his injured arm hanging at his side. Captain Vexton said, "I want to talk." Morrison nodded. "What do you want to know? Where do you come from? What is this Earth you mentioned?" Morrison was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke in a calm voice. "Earth is our home world. It's a small blue planet, about 50 light-years from here. How many ships does your people have?" "Enough." Vexton felt frustrated. The human was answering his questions, but not giving any useful information. He tried again. "We found pieces of your ship's computer. Our scientists are studying the data. Soon we will know everything about your people." For the first time, Morrison smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Good luck with that, Admiral." 3 days later, Science Officer Rollman brought his report to the Admiral's office. The Zilani looked tired and confused. "What did you find?" Vexton asked. Rollman placed a data tablet on the desk. The human computer was heavily damaged, but we recovered some files. "Admiral, these humans are not what we expected." "Explain." "First, they've only been in space for about 200 years. That's nothing compared to our 3,000-year space empire. But look at their technology." The screen showed images of human ships and weapons. "Their ships are smaller than ours, but they're incredibly efficient. Every system is designed for combat. Their weapons are more powerful than they should be, for their size." Vexton studied the images. "What else?" "Their culture, sir. Everything we found suggests that these humans are natural warriors. They have something called military history that goes back thousands of years. They've been fighting wars on their planet since before they discovered fire." "All species fight," Vexton said. "That's how evolution works." "Not like this, Admiral. Look at this." The screen showed human entertainment. Movies about war, books about battles, games where humans pretended to fight each other. "They enjoy conflict," Rollman explained. "They study it, they practice it, they make art about it. And sir, there's something else. The ship we destroyed wasn't exploring. It was part of something called a fleet action against something called the Centauri Rebellion." Vexton felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean they're already fighting wars?" "Yes, sir, against other humans. They've spread to multiple star systems, and they're fighting each other for control of colonies." The Admiral stared at the data. "If they're fighting each other, then they have experience with space combat. More than that, sir. Look at this battle record." The screen showed a list of engagements. Human fleets fighting other human fleets. Battles involving hundreds of ships. Tactics that the Zilani had never seen before. "They've been perfecting space warfare for decades," Rollman continued. "Every battle teaches them something new. Adapt quickly, and they never make the same mistake twice." Vexton thought about the battle with the human ship, the way it had moved, the way its armor had adapted to their weapons, the way the crew had fought to the death rather than surrender. What about their home world? How many ships defend it? Roman checked his notes. That's unclear, sir. But, based on the data fragments, Earth appears to be the center of a growing empire. They call it the United Earth Navy, and they have colonies on dozens of worlds. Dozens. Yes, sir. And if they're fighting rebellions, that means their military is spread out across multiple systems. But it also means they have experience fighting on many fronts at once. Vexton was beginning to understand the true scope of what they had encountered. These humans weren't primitive newcomers to space. They were an expanding military power that had been honing their skills in real combat. Sir Rallman said quietly, "There's one more thing. The prisoners. Dr. Park has been talking to our medical staff. What has she told them? Stories about Earth, about human medicine, human culture, but also about human military training. Sir, she says that every human child learns basic military skills in school. Every adult knows how to fight. Their entire society is organized around the idea that they might need to defend themselves." Vexton felt a deep unease. A warrior species. More than that, Admiral. A species that treats war as a science. They study every battle, analyze every defeat, and improve their methods. Dr. Park says they have a saying, "Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it." The Admiral thought about this. The Zalani Empire had conquered many worlds, because most species were peaceful. They had science and technology, but they didn't have the experience of constant warfare. The Empire's military advantage came from their willingness to use violence against peaceful neighbors. But these humans were different. They had been preparing for war their entire existence. "What do you recommend, Science Officer?" Roman was quiet for a long moment. "Sir, I think we need to report this to the Empire immediately. These humans represent a potential threat unlike anything we've faced before. You think they're dangerous?" "Sir, they destroyed one of our ships with a vessel 1/10 its size. They fought to the death rather than surrender, and according to their own records, that ship was considered average by their standards." Vexton looked at the data again. Images of human weapons, human ships, human soldiers, a species that had turned warfare into an art form. "Send a message to the Emperor," he ordered. "Tell him we've encountered a new species. Tell him they may require the attention of the entire fleet." As Rallman left the office, Vexton continued to study the human data. Somewhere out there, 50 light-years away, was a blue planet full of these warrior creatures. A world that had spawned a species that treated every battle as a lesson, every defeat as an opportunity to improve. For the first time in his 300 years of military service, Admiral Vexton felt something he had never experienced before. He felt afraid. War Marshal Kethfer stood in the command center of the battle station, Eternal Glory. Around him, 300 ships of the Zalani Third Fleet prepared for the mission that would define the future of the Empire. The greatest military force in Zalani history was about to hunt down and destroy the human species. "Status report," Kethfer commanded. Fleet Captain Mordick stepped forward. "All ships ready, War Marshal. We have traced the hyperspace route of the human vessel back toward their space. Intelligence estimates their homeworld has no more than 50 defending ships." Kethfer nodded. 50 ships against 300. It would be a massacre. The humans had fought well against Admiral Vexton as small patrol fleet, but they had never faced the full might of the Zalani Empire. "Begin the advance," he ordered. The massive fleet moved through hyperspace like a pack of hunting beasts. Their first target was a system the humans called Wolf 359. Intelligence said it was a mining colony with a small population. When they dropped out of hyperspace, Kethfer saw exactly what he expected. A few space stations orbited a small rocky planet. Asteroid mining facilities floated in the distance. And defending it all was a single small ship. "One vessel," reported Sensor Officer Kelter. "It's similar to the ship that Admiral Vexton encountered, but smaller." Kethfer examined the human ship on his screen. It was tiny compared to his massive fleet. The vessel looked like a patrol boat, not a warship. Its crew probably numbered less than 100. "Open communications," Kethfer ordered. The human ship responded immediately. A man appeared on the screen, wearing the same type of uniform they had seen before. He had gray hair and calm eyes. "This is Captain Ben Torres of the UES Ranger," the human said. "State your business in this system." Kethfer was impressed by the human's composure. Facing 300 enemy ships, the man showed no fear. "I am War Marshal Kethfer of the Zalani Empire. You and your people are hereby ordered to surrender. You will be relocated to serve the Empire. Resistance will result in death, Captain." Torres was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke words that would become famous throughout the galaxy. "Come and take it." The communication ended. Kethfer stared at the screen in surprise. A single ship was defying his entire fleet. Sir Mordic said, "Should we destroy them?" "Not yet. I want to see what they do." The human ship turned and accelerated toward the asteroid field. It was moving fast, faster than Zalani ships of similar size. "All ships, pursue and capture," Kethfer ordered. "I want prisoners." 50 Zalani ships moved to intercept the human vessel. It seemed like an impossible mismatch, but Kethfer had learned to be careful around humans. The first surprise came when the Ranger reached the asteroid field. Explosions erupted throughout the area as mining charges detonated in carefully planned patterns. Huge chunks of rock flew through space, forcing the Zalani ships to slow down and navigate carefully. "Clever," Kethfer admitted. "They're using the mining equipment as weapons." The second surprise came when the space stations began to move. They weren't stations at all, but disguised warships. Their civilian appearance fell away to reveal hidden weapons and armor. "Sir," Kelter called out. "The mining ships are also armed. They're converted cargo vessels with military weapons." Kethfer watched in fascination as the small human force began to fight. The Ranger danced between the asteroids, using the rock formations for cover. The disguised warships coordinated their fire with the mining vessels to create crossfire zones that caught Zalani ships in deadly traps. Most impressive of all was how the humans used everything around them as a weapon. Cargo containers became missiles. Mining equipment became defensive barriers. Even the asteroids themselves were turned into weapons as human ships pushed them into the paths of Zalani vessels. "They're fighting like pirates," Mordic observed. "No," Kethfer corrected. "They're fighting like people who understand that everything can be a weapon if you're creative enough." The battle lasted for 3 hours. Slowly, the human forces were overwhelmed. The disguised warships were destroyed, one by one. The mining vessels ran out of ammunition. Finally, only the Ranger remained, badly damaged and surrounded. "Surrender. Now," Kethfer broadcast. "You have fought well, but it's over." Captain Torres appeared on the screen again. His ship was falling apart around him, but his voice was still steady. "War Marshal, you want to know something about humans? We don't give up. Ever." The Ranger turned for one final attack. It accelerated straight toward the largest Zalani ship, the battlecruiser Voidhammer. The human ship was clearly planning to ram the much larger vessel. Zalani weapons fire tore through the Ranger's hull, but it kept coming. At the last second, the human ship exploded, but not from enemy fire. Captain Torres had detonated his own reactor, just like the crew of the Defiant. The explosion destroyed the Voidhammer and damaged 3 other ships. Kethfer stared at the expanding cloud of debris. 12 Zalani ships had been destroyed. 30 more had been damaged, all by a force of humans that numbered less than 5,000. "Sir," Mordic said quietly, "the casualty reports." Kethfer read the numbers. 15,000 Zalani, dead or wounded, against a mining colony defended by a single patrol ship. "What did we learn?" he asked his staff. "The humans fight differently than any species we've encountered," reported Intelligence Officer Yelmoth. "They don't have formal battle. lines, or traditional tactics. They use everything around them as a weapon. They're incredibly creative in combat. More than that, added Kelter, they don't surrender. Even when the battle is hopeless, they keep fighting. They'd rather die than give up. Kethfer thought about this. The Zilani Empire's standard strategy was to demonstrate overwhelming force, then accept the enemy's surrender. It was efficient and practical. But what did you do with an enemy that refused to surrender? Continue toward the next system, he ordered. The pattern repeated itself at the next human colony, and the next. Each time, the Zilani fleet faced desperate resistance from defenders who used every trick they could think of. Cargo ships rammed, Zilani cruisers. Civilian stations turned out to have hidden weapons. Human engineers turned industrial equipment into improvised weapons. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to learn from each battle. Their tactics improved each time. They shared information between colonies, so each new battle was harder than the last. At the Tau Ceti colony, human defenders used solar collection mirrors to focus starlight into weapon beams. At Proxima Centauri, they had turned the entire asteroid belt into a minefield. At each location, children and elderly civilians fought alongside soldiers. Sir, Yalmoth reported after the 5th colony, I'm detecting a pattern in human communications. What kind of pattern? They're not just defending, sir. They're delaying us. Each battle takes longer than the last, and they're sending detailed reports about our ships and tactics to someone. Kethfer felt a chill. They're gathering intelligence. Yes, sir. Every battle teaches them more about how we fight, and they're sending that information ahead of us. To where? Based on the communication directions, sir. Toward their home system, toward Earth. Kethfer realized what was happening. These weren't just desperate last stands. They were a strategy. Each human colony was sacrificing itself to buy time and gather information for their home world. The humans weren't just fighting individual battles. They were fighting a war. How many ships have we lost? He asked. Mordic checked his reports. 47 destroyed, over 100 damaged. We're down to about 180 effective combat vessels. Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His fleet was still powerful enough to destroy any normal enemy. But these humans weren't normal. Sir, Kelter called out, we're approaching the Sol system. We should arrive in 6 hours. The human home system? Yes, sir. According to our intelligence, that's where their main fleet is based. Kethvar thought about everything they had learned about humans. A species that never surrendered. A people who turned everything into a weapon. Warriors who treated each battle as a lesson for the next fight. And now his fleet was about to attack their home world. All ships, prepare for battle, he ordered. This is what we came for. But as the fleet moved toward the yellow star called Sol, Kethver couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were expecting them. That every battle so far had been preparation for this moment. That somehow, the hunters had become the hunted. The Sol system looked peaceful when the Zilani fleet arrived. War Marshal Kethver studied the displays showing the human home system. A yellow star, with several planets, including the blue world, called Earth. Space traffic moved normally between the planets. Everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. Sensor report, Kethver ordered. Sir? Kelter responded. I'm reading about 50 human warships in the system. Most of them are near Earth and a large space station. The ships are smaller than ours, similar to the ones we've been fighting. Kethver nodded. It was what their intelligence had predicted. The human home fleet was exactly the size they expected. But after fighting through 6 human colonies, he had learned not to trust appearances. Any sign of defenses. The usual orbital platforms around Earth, sir. Some weapon satellites. A large military station near their moon. Nothing that should trouble our fleet. Kethver looked at the tactical display. 180 Zilani ships against 50 human vessels. Even with everything they had learned about human fighting ability, the numbers were clearly in favor of the Empire. "Sir," Communications Officer Talvin announced, "we're receiving a transmission from the humans. Put it on screen." A human woman appeared, wearing an admiral's uniform. She had short gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to look right through the screen. "I am Admiral Kate Phillips, Commander of Ceres Station. You are in violation of Terran space. Turn around and leave immediately." Kethfer was surprised. Ceres Station was supposed to be a mining facility in the asteroid belt, not a military base. But this woman was clearly a military officer. "Admiral Phillips," Kethvar replied. "I am War Marshal Kethvar of the Zelania Empire. Your species has been judged a threat to galactic peace. Surrender now, and your people will be relocated to serve the Empire." Admiral Phillips smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "War Marshal, you've made a mistake. You've attacked our colonies, killed our people, and now you're threatening our home. Do you really think we're going to just give up? You have 50 ships. We have nearly 200. The choice is simple." "You're right. The choice is simple," Phillips agreed. "The question is whether you understand what choice you've really made." The transmission ended. Kethfer stared at the blank screen, feeling uneasy. The human admiral had seemed confident, almost amused. That didn't make sense. "Sir," Kelter called out urgently, "I'm detecting movement in the asteroid belt. Those aren't just mining stations, sir. They're military installations." The tactical display updated. What had looked like simple mining equipment was revealing itself as weapons platforms, hidden shipyards, and defensive positions. The asteroid belt wasn't just a mining area, it was a fortress. "How many installations?" Kethfer asked. "Sir, I'm counting over 300 separate facilities. And sir, they're all armed." Kethfer felt his confidence slipping. The humans had turned their entire asteroid belt into a weapon. But that wasn't the worst surprise. War Marshal Talvin announced, "The human home fleet is moving. They're not retreating toward Earth. They're advancing toward us. Advancing against our entire fleet." "Yes, sir." Admiral Jack Sullivan is commanding from a ship called the UES Constitution. He's leading the human fleet straight toward our position. Kethfer watched as the 50 human ships accelerated toward his much larger force. It was either incredibly brave or completely insane. "All ships, attack formation," he ordered. "If they want to fight, we'll give them a battle." The two fleets met in the space between Mars and the asteroid belt. The humans moved like they had in every previous battle, fast, unpredictable, using every advantage they could find. But this time, something was different. This time, they had support. As the battle began, the asteroid belt came alive. Weapons platforms that had been hidden inside asteroids opened fire. Ships emerged from concealed bases. The mining equipment that had looked harmless began launching missiles and energy beams. "Sir," Kelter shouted over the noise of battle, "the asteroids themselves are moving. They've put engines on them." Kethver watched in amazement as huge chunks of rock accelerated toward his ships. The humans had turned the asteroids into massive kinetic weapons. But the biggest surprise came from Earth itself. War Marshal Talvin called out, "I'm reading massive energy spikes from the human home world." The planet Earth began to reveal its secrets. Orbital platforms that had looked like communication satellites opened to reveal weapon systems. The moon's surface cracked open to show enormous railguns. Even the space stations around Earth dropped their peaceful disguises and showed their true military nature. They've militarized their entire system, Kethver realized. Everything here is a weapon. The battle raged for hours. The Zelani ships were powerful, but they were fighting not just the human fleet, but the entire Sol system. Every piece of human space infrastructure had been turned into a defensive position. Kethver's fleet was taking heavy losses, but they were still winning. The human ships were brave and clever, but they were outnumbered. Slowly, The Zalani fleet was pushing through the defenses toward Earth. Sir Mordick reported, "We've destroyed 30 human vessels. Their remaining ships are falling back toward Earth. Pursue them," Kethfer ordered. "We end this now." But as the Zalani fleet advanced on the human home world, Admiral Phillips' voice came over the communications again. "War Marshal, did you really think this was all we had?" Before Kethfer could ask what she meant, space itself seemed to tear open around the Sol system. Dozens of hyperspace portals opened, and through them came ships. Hundreds of ships that human colonial fleet had returned. "Sir," Selter's voice was filled with shock. "I'm reading over 200 human vessels entering the system. These aren't the same ships we've been fighting. These are bigger, newer, heavily armed." A new voice came over the communications. "This is Admiral Maria Santos of the Colonial Fleet. War Marshal, you picked the wrong species to hunt." Kethfa realized with growing horror what had happened. The battles at the colonies hadn't just been delaying actions. They had been buying time for the human main fleet to return from whatever campaign they had been fighting. The 50 ships defending Earth hadn't been the human home fleet. They had been the reserve force, the ships that stayed home while the real military was off fighting other wars. "Sir," Yelmoth reported from his intelligence station, "I'm analyzing the new human ships. War Marshal, these vessels have been in heavy combat recently. They've been fighting something called the Centauri Rebellion." "You mean they've been fighting other humans?" "Yes, sir. And based on the battle damage and modifications I'm seeing, they've been winning." Kethfer looked at the tactical display. His fleet was now surrounded by over 300 human ships, plus all the system defenses. The hunters had become the hunted. Admiral Santos opened a communication channel to the entire Zalani fleet. "War Marshal, you've learned something important today. You've learned that humanity doesn't surrender. But there's something else you should know. We don't just defend our home, we fight for it." The human fleet attacked from all directions. These weren't the desperate defenses Kethver had seen at the colonies. This was a coordinated assault by an experienced military force that had been fighting and winning wars for decades. The Zalani ships tried to maintain formation, but the humans used tactics that no one in the Empire had ever seen. Ships would disappear behind asteroids and reappear somewhere else. Human vessels would sacrifice themselves to create openings for their companions. The entire human fleet moved like a single living creature. "Sir," Mordick called out, "we're losing ships faster than we can count. The humans are using our own tactics against us, but better." Kethver realized the truth. Every battle at every colony had taught the humans something about Zalani tactics and technology. Now they were using that knowledge to destroy his fleet. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Fall back to hyperspace." But the humans had positioned their ships to cut off escape routes. The Sol system had become a trap, and the Zalani fleet was caught in it. "War Marshal," Admiral Santos broadcast, "before your remaining ships leave, I want you to take a message back to your empire." "What message?" "Tell them that Earth is under the protection of the United Earth Navy. Tell them we didn't want this war, but since they started it, we're going to finish it. And tell them this: we're very, very good at war." Of the 180 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 12 Zalani vessels escaped. War Marshal Kethfer was among the survivors, but his flagship was barely functional. As his damaged ship limped toward hyperspace, he looked back at the human system. Earth hung in space like a blue jewel, beautiful and peaceful. But Kethfer now knew the truth. Humanity's home world was protected by the most dangerous military force the galaxy had ever seen, a force that had been shaped by thousands of years of warfare and was led by people who would never surrender. The Zalani Empire had sent its greatest fleet to destroy the human species. Instead, they had awakened something that would change the galaxy forever. Emperor Vexel sat on his crystal throne in the heart of the Zalani capital world. Around him, the massive chamber filled with the sound of many voices as news of the disaster spread through the imperial court. The Third Fleet, the pride of the Empire, had been destroyed. Of 300 ships, only 12 had returned. War Marshal Kethver stood before the throne, his uniform torn and his face marked by scars from the battle. The proud military leader who had left to conquer the humans now looked like a broken, old soldier. "Tell me again," the Emperor commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. Kethver spoke slowly, his words heavy with defeat. "Your Majesty, the human species is not what we believed. They are not a primitive civilization that can be easily conquered. They are a military power that has been preparing for war their entire existence." "You had 300 ships," the Emperor said coldly. "How could a species we had never heard of destroy our greatest fleet?" "Because they think differently than we do, Your Majesty. When we fight, we follow traditional tactics. We use our superior numbers and technology to overwhelm our enemies. But humans, ... they use everything, every piece of equipment, every scrap of metal, every advantage they can find becomes a weapon." Admiral Vexton, who had survived the first encounter with humans, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, I have been studying the human prisoners we captured. They have been treated well, given medical care and proper quarters. But what they tell us is disturbing. Speak." "The humans have a saying, Your Majesty. Those who want peace must prepare for war. Their entire society is built around this idea. Every human child learns basic military skills. Every adult knows how to fight. They study warfare like we study art or literature." Emperor Thexuel leaned forward on his throne. "You're telling me that an entire species is made up of soldiers?" "Not exactly, Your Majesty," Vexton replied. "They have doctors, teachers, engineers, farmers, just like any civilization. But all of these people are also trained fighters. Dr. Lisa Park, their medical officer, knows more about military strategy than some of our generals." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, nobles and military officers whispered among themselves. The Zilani Empire had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years by being stronger than everyone else. Now they had met a species that was not only strong, but smart about how to use that strength. "What do they want?" the Emperor asked. Captain Jake Morrison entered the chamber. The human prisoner walked with dignity, even though he was surrounded by Zilani guards. He had been given clean clothes and medical treatment for his wounds, but his eyes still held the same determination that had impressed Admiral Vexton. "Your Majesty," Morrison said, "I bring a message from the United Earth government. Speak, human." Morrison stood straight and delivered his message in a clear voice. "Earth does not want to be your enemy. We would have preferred to meet your people in peace. We could have been allies, trading partners, friends. But you chose to attack our colonies and threaten our home. You chose war. And now you know what humans are capable of when we're forced to fight. We didn't want this war, Your Majesty, but since you started it, we're prepared to finish it." Emperor Thexuel felt anger rising in his chest. This small creature was threatening the mighty Zilani Empire. "You think your 50 ships can challenge our entire fleet?" Morrison smiled, and the expression sent a chill through the watching nobles. "Your Majesty, the 50 ships that defended Earth were just our reserve force. Our main fleet was busy putting down a rebellion in the Centauri colonies. We have over 500 ships, and more being built every day. But that's not the real problem you face," Morrison continued. "The real problem is that word of your defeat is spreading throughout the galaxy. All those species you conquered over the centuries, they're starting to remember that they used to be free." As if summoned by his words, a communication officer rushed into the chamber. "Your Majesty? We're receiving reports from across the Empire. Rebellions are breaking out on dozens of worlds. The conquered species are rising up against our rule." Emperor Thexel felt his world crashing down around him. The Zilani Empire's power had always been based on the idea that resistance was hopeless. But the humans had proven that even a superior force could be defeated if you fought smart and never gave up. "What do you suggest, human?" the Emperor asked. "Peace," Morrison replied simply. "End the rebellions by giving the conquered worlds their freedom. Work with the other species as equals instead of ruling them as slaves. Join the galactic community instead of trying to dominate it. And if we refuse," Morrison's expression became serious, "then Earth will support the rebellions, will provide weapons, training, and tactical advice to anyone who wants to be free. Your Majesty, you've seen what humans can do when we're defending our own world. Imagine what we can accomplish when we're helping others fight for their freedom." Emperor Nexel realized that everything had changed. The humans had not just defeated the Third Fleet, they had destroyed the foundation of imperial power. The Zilani Empire could no longer claim to be the strongest force in the galaxy. "Leave us," the Emperor commanded. "We must consider your words." As Morrison was led away, Emperor Vexel turned to his advisors. "What are our options?" War Marshal Kethfer spoke first. "Your Majesty, we could assemble the entire Imperial fleet and attack Earth with everything we have." "How many ships would that be?" "Perhaps 800 vessels, Your Majesty." "And how many would survive?" Kethfer was quiet. After facing the humans in battle, he understood their capabilities. "Perhaps half, Your Majesty. But even if we won, the cost would be enormous, and the rebellions would continue while our fleet was engaged." "What about negotiation?" asked Imperial Advisor Mortel. "With humans?" War Marshal Kethfer shook his head. "Your Majesty, I've studied their history. When humans negotiate, they negotiate from a position of strength. They won't accept anything less than complete equality." Emperor Thexel thought about this. The Zilani Empire had never treated any species as equals. The entire imperial system was based on Zilani superiority. "But," Mortel continued, "the humans have shown that they can be merciful to those who surrender honorably. Their prisoners are treated well. They don't execute defeated enemies or enslave captured populations." "You're suggesting we surrender to them?" "I'm suggesting we recognize reality, Your Majesty. The humans have changed everything. They've shown the galaxy that the Empire can be defeated. We can either adapt to this new reality, or we can fight a war that will destroy both our species." 3 months later, Captain Morrison stood in a place he had never expected to see, the bridge of a Zilani diplomatic vessel approaching Haven Station, a neutral world that would serve as the site for peace negotiations. Admiral Vexton, no longer a prisoner, but now serving as a diplomatic representative, stood beside him. The Zilani admiral had requested asylum on Earth after the Emperor's government collapsed. Many Zilani worlds had declared independence when they saw that even their own empire was not immune to rebellion. Captain Vexton said, "I've been thinking about something Dr. Park told me." "What's that?" "She said that humans have a saying. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. I think I understand now what makes your species so dangerous." Morrison nodded. "We don't fight because we love war, Admiral. We fight because we love peace. And we're willing to be very good at war to protect the peace we love." Haven Station appeared on the screen ahead of them. Representatives from dozens of species would be there, working to create a new galactic government based on equality and cooperation instead of conquest and domination. "Captain," Vexton asked, "what do you think the galaxy will look like in 100 years?" Morrison thought about this. "I think it will be more dangerous, Admiral. When every species knows how to defend itself, wars will be more costly and more destructive. But I also think it will be more free. No one will be able to conquer others easily, and humanity's role in this new galaxy. We'll be teachers, Admiral. We'll share what we know about warfare and defense. We'll help other species learn to protect themselves. and we'll stand ready to fight alongside anyone who values freedom. Vexton was quiet for a moment. I think, Captain, that your species will be the most dangerous allies the galaxy has ever seen. Morrison smiled. And the most loyal. That's what makes humans different, Admiral. We don't just fight for ourselves. We fight for the idea that everyone deserves to be free. As their ship docked at Haven Station, Morrison thought about the journey that had brought them here. It had started with a damaged warship and a desperate battle in an empty star system. It had led to the transformation of galactic civilization. Humanity's first contact with the galaxy had indeed been a warship, and it had changed everything, just as the ancient warning found on Mars had predicted. The galaxy had met humanity in war and learned to respect their strength. Now it would meet them in peace and discover the true power of a species that fought, not for conquest, but for the right of every being to live free. The age of empires was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin, and at the heart of it all stood a species that had learned, over thousands of years of conflict, that the best way to ensure peace was to be very, very good at war.